Parvati once said to Lord Shiva, "My dear husband, you know all transcendental truths. By your mercy, I have heard the glories of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, kindly tell me the glories of the Bhagavad Gita, spoken by Lord Krishna, for I know that one increases one's devotion to him by hearing these topics." Lord Shiva replied, "That person whose body has the color of a dark rain cloud, whose carrier is Garuda, the king of birds, and who lies on Anantashesha, the thousand-headed serpent, that Lord Vishnu, or Krishna, whose glories have no limit, I always worship." Then Shiva described how Lord Krishna controls all things, yet simultaneously remains aloof, and how his great devotees, by remembering his divine acts, free themselves from repeated birth and death, and attain his eternal nature free from duality. Furthermore, Lord Shiva described how Lord Vishnu rests on the ocean of milk and watches the wonderful workings of his energies. Once, Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, asked Lord Vishnu, "O my Lord, you cause the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material universes. Kindly inform me about the workings of your wonderful energies, which attract even you." Lord Vishnu then told her that only a person with purified intelligence is inclined to serve him, and can thus know and understand his energies. Such a person learns how to become free from the bondage of birth and death and attain the divine nature. Such transcendental knowledge, the Lord told her, is fully explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Then Lakshmi asked, "My Lord, if you yourself are amazed by the workings of your energies, how is it possible that the Bhagavad Gita can describe those unlimited energies and the way to overcome them?" Lord Vishnu said, "I manifested myself in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. The first 5 chapters are my 5 heads. The next 10 chapters are my 10 arms. The 16th chapter is my stomach, and the last 2 chapters are my lotus feet. This Bhagavad Gita is a destroyer of all sins, and the intelligent person who daily recites 1 chapter, or 1 verse, or half a verse, or even 1 line will attain the same position as Susharma." He then began reciting the glories of the first chapter. Susharma, although born in a Brahmana family, was a sinful, wicked man, devoid of piety. He particularly enjoyed hurting others. For his livelihood, he sold leaves he had collected and sewn together to make plates and cups. One day, Susharma entered the garden of a sage to collect leaves, and a snake slithered in and killed him. Because of all his sins, he was cast into many hells and suffered a long time. Afterward, he received the body of a bull. As a bull, he was purchased by a crippled man, and for many years had to carry heavy loads. One day, the bull, his back piled with such an extremely heavy load, fell unconscious. Bystanders felt sorry for the bull, and bestowed upon it some results of their pious acts. One person there, a prostitute, doubted she had ever performed pious acts, but upon learning that everyone was offering pious credits to the bull, she also offered whatever results of pious activities she might have had. After the bull died and entered the abode of Yamaraj, the god of death, Yamaraj informed him, "Now you are freed from the reactions to all your previous sinful deeds, because a prostitute gave you her pious credits." In his next life, Susharma again took birth as an elevated Brahmana, but this time he could remember his past lives. He decided to find the prostitute who had caused his liberation from hell. When he found her, he asked her what pious acts she had performed. The prostitute replied that her pet parrot had daily recited verses that had completely purified her heart. Thereafter, the parrot told them about the recitation. In a previous life, the parrot had been a proud and envious, yet learned Brahmana, who had insulted other learned persons. He had now, therefore, received the body of a parrot. But, as a parrot, he had often heard certain sages reciting the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and he had also begun reciting it. So, he had become purified. After being sold to the prostitute, the parrot continued his recitations, and thus earned the prostitute pious credits. Susharma eventually became completely pure, and within a short time he attained Vaikuntha, the supreme destination. Lord Vishnu continued his glorification of the Bhagavad Gita. Please listen carefully, Lakshmi Devi, as I tell you the glories of the second chapter. Once, a learned Brahmana named Deva Sharma satisfied the demigods, but he remained unhappy because he desired to know the absolute truth. Out of his strong desire for such knowledge, Deva Sharma spoke with many sages and rendered service to them. One day, he met a meditating yogi who was peaceful and devoid of material desires. The yogi, who had complete knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, advised Deva Sharma to meet Mitravan, a goat herd in Asaupura, and take instruction from him in the science of God realization. Hearing this, Deva Sharma offered respectful obeisances to the yogi and left to find Mitravan. When Deva Sharma arrived in Asaupura, he found Mitravan in a beautiful forest beside a small river, seated atop some rocks. Mitravan looked peaceful, and his goats moved here and there fearlessly. Some goats even sat next to tigers and other ferocious animals. Deva Sharma also became peaceful, and he approached Mitravan to inquire about devotion to Lord Krishna. Mitravan narrated the following story. My dear Deva Sharma, once, when I was in this forest herding goats by the bank of this river, a tiger attacked. All the goats ran away, and so did I. From a distance, I saw one goat being chased by the tiger. But suddenly, a strange, wonderful thing happened. The tiger lost its anger and no longer desired to eat the goat. Mitravan described that both the tiger and goat were confused by this sudden peacefulness, and so they approached him to ask what had happened. Mitravan, in turn, inquired from a monkey who told him the story of Sukama, a learned sage. Sukama had once pleased another sage by feeding him sumptuously and speaking pleasant words. The pleased sage gave Sukama the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, written on stone. The sage left after giving Sukama an instruction to recite this chapter daily. Because Sukama followed this instruction, he quickly attained complete knowledge of Lord Krishna, and because of his devoted austerities, performed at the very place where Mitravan and the monkey were standing. Anyone who came there no longer felt the pangs of hunger and thirst, and at once attained complete peace. Thereafter, Mitravan told Deva Sharma that he and the tiger and goat had later found a stone in a temple and had begun reciting the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita daily. In this way, they had quickly attained devotion to Lord Krishna. Deva Sharma decided to carefully follow Mitravan's example, and thereafter, in the village where Deva Sharma lived, visitors would recite with him the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. In this way, Deva Sharma attained the mercy and the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Lord Vishnu then recited the glories of the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita by narrating the story of Jada. Jada was a Brahmana who had wasted his wealth in gambling, drinking, hunting, and visiting prostitutes. Once, after going on a business trip, he earned a lot of money and then decided to return home. On his way, Jada stopped for a night in a deserted place. Robbers there plundered his wealth and murdered him, and because of his sinful life, Jada attained the body of a ghost. Jada's son, in spite of his father, was religious and learned in the Vedic scriptures. When the father remained absent for a long time, the son decided to search for him. Wherever the son went, he inquired about his father. One day, the son met a man who told him what had happened. Jada's son started at once for Gaya to worship Lord Vishnu to release his father from ghostly life. One evening, on the way to Gaya, the son happened to perform his daily worship of Lord Krishna under the same tree where his father had been killed. As the son recited the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, a loud sound came from the sky. He looked up and saw his father change into a most beautiful being, his body the color of a dark rain cloud. He was four-armed, he was dressed in yellow cloth, and his bodily effulgence lit up all directions. The father said, "My dear son, because you recited the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you freed me from a ghostly form. Now you should return home. The purpose of your going to Gaya has already been achieved." Then the father asked the son to liberate a brother and some ancestors who had also led sinful lives and were suffering in hell. The son said he would recite the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita until the time all the souls trapped in hell were freed. Then an airplane arrived from Vaikuntha, the spiritual world, and transported the father to the supreme destination. The son returned home and began reciting daily the third chapter in front of a deity of Lord Krishna. As the recitations continued, Lord Vishnu sent his messengers, the Vishnu Dutas, to the kingdom of Yamaraj, who punishes the sinful. The Vishnu Dutas told Yamaraj that Lord Vishnu wished him well and had ordered him to free the conditioned souls suffering in hell. Yamaraj at once had all the souls released. Then Yamaraj went to Svetadvip, the island in the ocean of milk, to see Lord Vishnu. Yamaraj found the Lord lying on his serpent bed Anantashesha, while Lakshmi Devi massaged his feet. His spiritual body had the effulgence of many suns, and demigods and sages surrounded him and sang his praises. With folded hands, Yamaraj offered obeisances and prayers to Lord Vishnu. "My dear Lord Vishnu, you are the well-wisher of all the conditioned souls, and there is no limit to your glories. From you the Vedas have come. You are time and the cause of time. You are the cause and the maintainer of the three worlds, and you will destroy all things. You are the Supersoul, directing everyone's activities. You are the Guru of the universe and the goal of devotees. O Lotus-eyed One, please accept my obeisances again and again." After praying, Yamaraj asked the Lord for instructions. In a voice as deep as thunder and sweet as nectar, Lord Vishnu replied, "My dear Yamaraj, I need not instruct you on your duty. Kindly return to your abode, and in the future, continue your duty with my full blessings." Thereafter, Jada's son was taken to the abode of Lord Vishnu, where he eternally engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Vishnu then described the glories of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He told of a saint named Bharat who lived on the bank of the Ganges. There, the devoted Bharat daily recited the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Once, Bharat went on pilgrimage to the town of Tapodan and saw a deity of Lord Krishna. On his way home, he rested beneath 2 fruit trees, using the root of one as a pillow and the root of the other as a footrest. There, as usual, he recited the 4th chapter. When Bharat left that place, both trees dried up and died. The 2 souls living in those trees took their next births as daughters of a pious Brahmana. When the girls reached 7 years of age, they went on pilgrimage and happened to meet the great sage Bharat. Upon seeing him, they fell at his feet and said in sweet words, "O Maharaj Bharat, by your mercy we were freed from the forms of trees." Bharat heard this with surprise. Then the girls told Bharat their story. Dear Maharaj Bharat, in a previous life we were apsaras, heavenly nymphs. Once we were ordered by King Indra to cause the fall down of the sage Satyatapa, who was performing difficult austerities on the bank of the river Godavari. Satyatapa had complete control over his senses and had become so advanced in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that Brahma, the creator of the universe, daily visited him to inquire from him about devotional service. But Indra was displeased to see Satyatapa's purity and elevation. Indra worried that this powerful sage would one day want to usurp the position of King of Heaven. To prevent this, Indra sent us to the bank of the Godavari. There, we danced provocatively to sexually agitate the sage and seduce him. As we danced, our breasts became visible, and Satyatapa cursed us, saying, "You both go and become fruit trees on the bank of the river Ganga." Upon hearing his curse, we fell at his feet and begged forgiveness, for we had acted merely as Indra's servants. When Satyatapa saw our repentant attitude, he became pleased and told us we would live as trees only until Maharaj Bharat came in contact with us. He also blessed us that we would be able to remember our previous lives. Reminding Bharat that he had rested between 2 fruit trees, the 2 girls said they had heard his recitation of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. After being freed from that form of life, they said, they had been born in a family of devotees. Since then, they had lost all desire to enjoy this world. They had carefully been reciting the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita daily, and thus had attained devotion to the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu asked Lakshmi Devi to listen carefully as he described the glories of the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Once, in a town named Purukutsapura, there lived a Brahmana called Pingala. Although well educated, he lacked interest in studying, and so when he reached youth, he gave up his educational pursuits. Instead, he learned to play musical instruments and sing and dance. He became so skilled and famous that the king invited him to live in the palace. But his intimacy with the king made him proud, and he became fond of criticizing others. Worse, he took up intoxication and adultery. Despite his promiscuity, Pingala had a wife named Aruna, who had been born in a low-class family. She too was lusty and promiscuous, and when Pingala discovered this, Aruna murdered him. Thereafter, she enjoyed life with many men, but she soon contracted a venereal disease. Her youthful body, therefore, became ugly, and before long she died. Both husband and wife fell into the deepest regions of hell and suffered tremendously. In their next lives, they both took birth as birds, Pingala a vulture and Aruna a parrot. One day, while the parrot searched for food, the vulture attacked her. The vulture could somehow remember his past life, and he understood that the parrot had been his wife. After a flurry of fighting, both birds fell down and drowned in a human skull filled with water. They were brought before Yamaraj, and because they vividly remembered their sins, they were frightened. But Yamaraj said, "You are now freed of all simple reactions and may go to Vaikuntha." Dumbfounded, Pingala and Aruna asked Yamaraj how persons of their caliber had the right to enter Vaikuntha. Then Yamaraj told them about a pure devotee of Lord Vishnu who had daily recited the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. When this devotee, who was completely free of lust, left his body, he went straight to Vaikuntha. Because of his recitations of Bhagavad Gita, his body had also become pure. Therefore, when Pingala and Aruna, as birds, had touched his skull, both of them had achieved freedom from sinful reactions and attained the right to enter Vaikuntha. After Pingala and Aruna heard the glories of the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, they became overjoyed, and a flower airplane arrived to take them to the spiritual world. Lord Vishnu then recited the glories of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. In a beautiful town named Pratishtanapur, on the bank of the Godavari River, there ruled a popular king named Janashruti. He had many good qualities, and he daily performed an opulent fire sacrifice and many other pious acts. He gave charity, dug wells and lakes, and so on. Once, some demigods went to the king's residence in the form of swans. As they flew above his palace, the demigod Bhadrashva heard several swans mention Janashruti's greatness. But Bhadrashva laughed and asked, "Is Janashruti Maharaj as powerful as the great sage Raikva?" The king happened to hear the swans' conversation from the roof of his high palace, and he then went down in a happy mood and ordered his charioteer to go out and find Raikva. Thus ordered, the charioteer departed for holy places. Upon arriving in Kashmir, he saw the sage sitting on a small cart near the door of a temple. The charioteer fell at Raikva's feet and asked him where he lived, what his full name was, and why he was sitting there. Raikva thought for some time and replied, "I am fully satisfied. I do not require anything." The charioteer understood and returned at once to Pratishtanapur. When he arrived, he offered his respects to the king and informed him of all that had taken place. The king then decided to visit the great sage Raikva. Seated on a beautiful chariot filled with valuable gifts, he left for Kashmir. When the king finally met Raikva and had fallen at his feet, he placed many silks and jewels before the sage. The sage, however, became angry and said, "You foolish king, take these useless things away. Put them on your chariot and leave this place at once." With great devotion, the king fell at Raikva's feet again and begged to be forgiven. He asked, "O sage, how have you attained such a level of renunciation and devotion to the Lord?" Pleased by the king's submissive attitude, Raikva replied that he had daily recited the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Thereafter, King Janashruti also began to recite it daily. After some time, a flower airplane appeared and took the king to Vaikuntha. Raikva, in the meantime, had also gone to Vaikuntha, where he engaged in the service of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. After narrating how Lord Vishnu had spoken to Lakshmi Devi the glories of the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Shiva said to Parvati, "Now I will tell you the glories of the 7th chapter." Lord Shiva narrated the story of Shankukarna, a Brahmana occupied as a businessman. Shankukarna amassed so much wealth that kings visited his house to dine. But the miserly Shankukarna kept some of his wealth buried, concealed from his relatives, and he never performed devotional acts or the rituals for his forefathers. Once, after his 4th marriage, Shankukarna took rest for the night. While asleep, he received a snake bite and died. He attained the body of a snake ghost, and he came to reside at the place where he had buried his wealth. Eventually, he became tired of being trapped in a ghostly body, so he appeared to his sons in a dream and asked for their help. When his lazy sons woke up, they talked about their dream. Then one of them took a spade and went to the place his father had indicated. The son did not know exactly where to find the buried wealth, but he searched greedily until he found a snake hole. As he started to dig, suddenly a huge and appalling snake crawled out and asked, "Who are you? Who sent you to dig here?" Trembling for his life, the son replied, "It is me, your son, Shiva, to whom you appeared in a dream." The snake laughed and asked why the boy, if indeed his son, had not performed the necessary rituals to free him from hellish life. The son inquired how to do this. His father replied, "Not by any kind of charity or austerities, but only by recitation from the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita will I become free from birth and death." The father instructed his son to invite a Brahmana to recite the 7th chapter during a ceremony to offer oblations to the forefathers. As this ceremony took place, the Brahmana chanted the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and Shankukarna gave up his frightful body and attained a divine 4-armed form. Before he left for Vaikuntha, he blessed his sons and told them the location of his wealth. After digging it up, the sons, whose minds had become fixed in devotion to Lord Krishna, used the wealth to build temples, dig wells and holy ponds, and distribute sanctified food. Moreover, the sons daily recited the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita and quickly attained the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Anyone who recites or hears this chapter will be freed from all sinful reactions. Thereafter, Lord Shiva asked Parvati to listen to the glories of the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. A Brahmana of the name Bhavasharma once lived in the important town Amardakapur. He had taken a prostitute as his wife, and he enjoyed meat-eating, intoxication, stealing, adultery, and hunting. Once, after a bout of drinking wine, Bhavasharma contracted a serious disease, and after many days of suffering, he died and attained the body of a date palm tree. One day, 2 ghosts, Brahmarakshasas, took shelter beneath this palm tree after unceasingly wandering over the earth, hungry and thirsty. By their activities in a previous life, they had attained these ghostly bodies. One of them had once been the Brahmana, Kushibala, who had been conversant with many branches of knowledge, and had been learned in the Vedas. The other ghost had been his wife, Kumati. Kushibala and his evil-minded wife, both greedy, had been in the habit of collecting much charity daily, without ever giving charity to other brahmanas. When they died, they both became ghosts. So, while these two ghosts were resting under the palm tree, the one who had been the wife asked her former husband how to atone. He replied that by having knowledge of Brahman, the self, and fruitive activities, this could be accomplished. Upon hearing this, his wife inquired, "What is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities?" Because she spoke in Sanskrit, she coincidentally chanted the first 2 lines of the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Upon hearing these lines, Bhavasharma became freed from his tree body and again attained the body of a sinless Brahmana. And suddenly, a spiritual airplane appeared to take the ghostly husband and wife back to Vaikuntha. Thereafter, Bhavasharma wrote down the 2 lines from the Bhagavad Gita, and he went to Kashipuri with the intention of worshipping Lord Krishna by performing great austerities and continuously chanting these 2 lines, Kim tad Brahma, Kim Adhyatmam, Kim Karma Purushottama. After some time, in Vaikuntha, Lord Vishnu once unexpectedly arose from his rest. Lakshmi Devi inquired with folded hands what had awakened him. Lord Vishnu said, "My dear Lakshmi, in Kashipuri, on the bank of the river Ganges, my devotee is performing great austerities by continuously chanting half a verse of the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. For a long time, I have been thinking how to reward his devotion." Lord Shiva then told Parvati that Bhavasharma pleased Lord Vishnu so much that the Lord awarded him a place in Vaikuntha to engage eternally in the service of his lotus feet. Moreover, all his ancestors also attained the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Lord Shiva then related to Parvati the glories of the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Once, in a town called Mahishmati, there lived a Brahmana named Madhava. He strictly followed all the Vedic injunctions, and he was so learned that he always received much charity, with which he performed great sacrifices. Once, however, when he was about to offer a goat in sacrifice, the goat laughed and said, "O Brahmana, what benefit is there in performing these sacrifices, which simply keep one in the cycle of repeated birth and death? Just see my position after performing so many fire sacrifices." Madhava asked the goat what activities it had performed in previous lives to become a goat. Everyone at the sacrifice gathered around to hear the goat's words. The goat told them that he had been a ritualistic Brahmana. Because his wife had wanted her child cured of some disease, she had once asked him to offer a goat to Durga, the wife of Lord Shiva. As the Brahmana offered the goat, it cursed him, "You sinner, lowest of all! You wish to make my children fatherless? You will also have to take birth as a goat." So, at the time of his death, the Brahmana had attained the body of a goat. But by the grace of Lord Govinda, he remembered his previous birth. The goat continued, "Once, in Kurukshetra, there lived a king named Chandrasharma, who belonged to the Sun dynasty. At the time of a solar eclipse, the king decided to give a Shudra, a worker, to a Brahmana. After he offered this worker to the Brahmana with much devotion, 2 Chandalas, or dog-eaters, appeared from the worker's body. Both of them closely approached the Brahmana and suddenly entered his body. The Brahmana, however, remained undisturbed, and while remembering Lord Govinda, he began chanting the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The whole event stunned the king. His amazement increased, however, when the Vishnu Dutas, the devotees of Lord Vishnu, appeared. The Vishnudutas ousted the Chandalas from the Brahmana's body and drove them away. Then the king asked the Brahmana, "O learned one, who were those two persons, and which mantras did you chant? Which deity did you remember?" The Brahmana explained that sin personified, accompanied by offense personified, had appeared as two Chandalas, and he had been chanting the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which can release one from all fearful situations. He informed the king that by chanting this chapter, anyone can remember the lotus feet of Govinda. Thereafter, the king learned from the Brahmana to chant the 9th chapter, and he gradually attained the lotus feet of Govinda. When Madhava heard this narration from the goat, he at once set the goat free. Thereafter, Madhava recited the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita daily.